Hey, I just wanted to give you a quick heads up before we get underway that this episode does touch on suicide, a failed suicide attempt, and a quick description of that attempt. And with that in mind, this is episode 22 of Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God.
And we're watching the TV, and then all of a sudden, that big 6-foot palm tree falls directly in front of the TV. I mean, dirt and all, everything. It just toppled right over. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he goes, "How did that happen?" I have no idea. He goes, "No, you don't understand. Like, that thing weighs about 150 pounds. There's no way."
This is Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. How does that 150-pound palm tree falling over in the living room, how is that associated? How did God use that to stop a suicide? Remarkable story coming up in this episode of Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. In this week's episode of Touched by Heaven, another amazing case of divine intervention.
Good morning.
From Victoria, British Columbia, in Canada, singer Maria Manna. How'd you find us?
Well, I have to tell you, my sister Daniela said to me, there is a podcast that will give you goosebumps every time you tune in. And I said, what is it? And she said, Touched by Heaven. Well, instantly I thought, I've got to pick up that podcast. And I've been listening to you ever since.
Oh, how cool. And I have to ask you this. Did you give yourself your last name, or were you born into manna?
So I married a gentleman by the last name of Manna. And of course, we're divorced now for about 20 some odd years. But I just thought it was such a beautiful name, and what a blessed name it is. And I just kept it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm going, manna? Whose name? Manna from heaven? I mean, that's just beautiful. Well, very good. Okay. Well, how long ago was this?
This was 18 years ago. So what happened, so I'm, just to give you a bit of background, born and raised Italian Roman Catholic. So that's double guilt. The Roman Catholic is, we were raised with guilt on that, but then Italian Roman Catholic, it's like you're doing everything wrong.
Well, the Jews are given credit for creating the guilt, but we perfected it.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised Roman Catholic, Italian Roman Catholic, I would go to church after I had my kids. I'd bring my kids to school and go to church Monday to Friday every morning from 8:30 to 9. It was just my thing. And I would fast three days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Saturday or Sunday, I would go for Saturday Mass or Sunday Mass. And so that was my routine. And I have such a beautiful relationship with the Lord. Long story short, my husband and I get a divorce. I kind of feel not accepted in my Catholic Italian church anymore. So I start to, just church hop, religion hop, and always having Jesus with me, but thinking, okay, where am I going to go? Where am I going to plant myself? So I end up meeting my husband who lives here in Victoria, and I moved out here. So I meet my husband, and he said to me that he became a born-again Christian when he was 14 at a camp. And I said, I was really excited about that. And I said, so what church do you go to? And he said, well, I don't. And I said, oh, how come? And he said, well, I'm spiritual now. And I said, what does that mean? He goes, well, I just believe in the universe. And I said, okay, where does God fit in there? And he said, well, it's more about the energy. And I'm thinking, what kind of wishy-washy Christian person are you, right? So anyway, I accepted that. I continued to be an example of Christ because that's what I believe that we need to do more of. He had an 11-year-old boy who was quite troubled because my husband had gone through a really horrible divorce, and the child had gone through this horrid period through this divorce. Anyway, so one day when I moved in with Chris and his son Kyle, I said to Kyle, please do not remove anything off of my computer, my laptop. I need absolutely everything that's on there. And it was like I said to him, go and remove everything on my computer. And it was just me and my computer from Edmonton moving to the island. I had nothing really else that had all my memoirs and things like that. So he erased everything to put a game on it. And I had no idea how to deal with this because here was a bit of a fragile child. He, was not well from the divorce. And I said to him, why did you do that? And he said, because I wanted to put my game on. And I said, but you got rid of absolutely everything that was near and dear to me that was on this computer. So his father comes home, and this is what he said, just simply this: Kyle, after dinner, you're going to your room. Like in that tone, right? Like, I'm Italian. I'm pretty fiery, and I would have, raised it up a couple of decibels. But he was really calm. And I thought, okay, this is the way you deal with your child. Fine. Let's see what's going to happen. So I had a 6-month-old Maltese named Puccelli. And Puccelli was just, those cute little, they're just like these white fluff balls that just bounce all over the place.
Right.
And here, Puccelli followed Kyle upstairs to his bedroom, as she always did. She always followed Kyle everywhere because Kyle was a child, and she just wanted to follow the child. And so
Kyle was how old at this point?
11.
Okay.
So Chris and I do up the dishes. We sit down just in time to watch, I don't know if it was Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, and we sat on this big chaise lounge chair. It was huge that both of us could sit on it. And we're watching the TV, which is probably about a 60-inch TV. It was huge. It covered almost the whole wall. And beside the TV, as you're facing the TV, to the right of the TV was a huge palm tree. And the plant, it was a plant. And it was about 6 feet tall. And the pot that it was in, probably across, was about 3 feet. So this was a huge, huge plant. So anyway, we hear the dog barking upstairs, and Chris goes, what is he doing to that dog? So Chris takes the remote control and ups the volume so we don't hear the dog. And I kind of thought that was a little bizarre. This is his son. That's my dog. What's he doing to my dog? And we keep watching the show, and the dog is just constantly barking, constantly. And Chris ups the volume again to the TV. And we're continuing to watch. And then all of a sudden, that big 6-foot palm tree falls directly in front of the TV. I mean, dirt and all. Everything. It just toppled right over. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he goes, how did that happen? And I said, this is your house. I have no idea. He goes, no, you don't understand. Like, that thing weighs about 150 pounds. There's no way. And then he goes, what is he doing to that dog? So he marches up the stairs. He opens the door. The dog immediately stops barking. And there's Kyle lying on the bed with the belt of his robe tied around his throat, and he was blue. And he had his fingers on it around his neck, almost like he wanted to take it off.
Was he hanging from something?
No, he was lying on his bed.
He just had it that tight that he couldn't breathe.
He couldn't, how terry towel kind of fabric, if you tie it really tight, it's hard to undo.
Yeah.
Well, he had, he twisted it around his throat, tied it, twisted it around his throat, tied it. So he had 2 ties on it, and he just couldn't take it off. And we just found him there unconscious with his fingers in the thing, trying to take it off. And I was following behind Chris, and he goes, Maria, he's dying. So he started loosening it up, and he slapped him a couple of times on the face. So Kyle started coming to. I said, should I call an ambulance? He goes, no, he's coming to. He's coming to. So, he said, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And Kyle said, after he finished coughing and we gave him some water, he said, why are you doing this? He said, I upset. He was already calling me mom. He said, I upset mom so much that I just didn't want to live anymore. And he said, it wasn't worth living anymore. And when I started doing it, he said, then I started realizing, no, I don't want to die. No, I don't want to die. But when I couldn't get it off my neck, I realized that I was supposed to die. And it was time for me to go. And, oh my God, we cried so much. But if it wasn't for that plant that fell in front of the TV, we would have found a dead boy. I mean, I'm still shocked. I can still see it in front of my eyes, all the dirt. But after all that happened, in the middle of the night, Chris wakes me up and he said, that's it. That's it. That was divine intervention. God made that plant fall in front of the TV to distract us so we could go and save Kyle. God did that. That was a Jesus thing.
And the dog. And the dog. It's like,
and the dog.
And then that palm tree. And I'm assuming you didn't have the volume up so loud that the entire house was vibrating to the point where it's going to knock over 150-pound.
No,
tree.
There is no way. There was no way. I mean, he didn't have those big speakers or anything like that. We just had it was a large screen, but it wasn't like we had, a boom speaker or whatever. And Chris said, that's it. My life is devoted to Christ. I am, Maria, find me a church to go to. I got to go to a church. And I said, wow, 2 miracles, right? First Kyle's saved, and then Chris is saved. So it got really interesting because I had typical Italian. As soon as I met him, I put a cross necklace, typical Catholic Italian, put a cross necklace around his neck. And I said, you wear this for the rest of your life because you need protection. And he had taken it off for a while. And he said, in the middle of the night, he went looking for the cross and he goes, where's that necklace? And I said, what necklace? He goes, the necklace you bought me. Where is it? And I said, well, it's in the jewelry box. And he went and got it. He goes, I'm never taking this off. You know what? Trapper Jack, he has never taken that necklace off. I mean, he goes to a pool, he goes swimming, he takes a shower. He never takes off that necklace. And he said, and furthermore, I don't want anybody swearing around me. I said to him, who's swearing around you? He goes, I don't want anybody. So when we would go to, functions and things like that, and someone would say a swear, he would say, please don't swear around me. And they would just look at him like, what is the matter with you? He started going to church every Sunday, and it was like an awakening for him. It was so beautiful, so beautiful.
Wow. I mean, there's so many wows and so many questions. And so, now Kyle is about 30 now, right?
He's 29, doing well.
And does this ever come up in conversation?
I think I brought it up probably about a month ago, and I said, Kyle, you should go, because Kyle ended up having a bit of a tough time later on. He did attempt suicide one more time, and that was another divine intervention. But he's had a bit of a rough life, but he's so steady now on his feet that I said, you need to go and talk to kids in schools. Maybe write a book on this. You need to share your story because there's so many kids out there who need to hear it. And but he's okay now. He's doing well.
Was the other time in the teens also?
Yeah.
It's such a horrible time. Teens, it's just, and I went through it too. I had suicidal thoughts when I was a teenager. Thankfully, I never did anything with them, but they were there. It's a horrible time with all the glory that is given to the teen years and all of that. For many of us, I'm throwing myself in there. And I was just talking to my wife about this too, because we talked about, and she also said, as a teenager, those thoughts creep into a lot of minds, lot of minds. There is such peer pressure. There are pressures on you that you have never felt before. Your body is doing things it's never done before. Your mind is doing things. It's tough. It's such a critical time in our lives.
But if you have just a glimmer of Christ, just a glimmer of Jesus anywhere in your life, and you just think, many times people don't think about that when they're in this moment, but he sends his angels, and I believe that. I believe that his angels come, and his angels were rescuing Kyle.
Several days later, I had part 2 of my interview with Maria Manna. And we talked about the second attempt by Kyle. It was with pills this time, but he immediately came to Maria, and with the help of his father and an ambulance, he got the medical attention he needed. And we'll talk about how Kyle's doing now at age 29 in just a moment here. But let's continue the conversation of that moment when you realize God is that close, that he just knocked over a tree or sent an angel or however this worked. And you mentioned how, what's your husband's first name? I'm sorry. Christopher. He knew there was divine intervention, and he turned to Christ. He turned to the church. He wanted to go to a church. You gave him the cross. You had this process that came about. One of the great blessings of that horrible, horrible night was, number one, I know Kyle felt loved and he felt regrets and all those things, but also for the family, you got a husband who became a Christian, that night, if you will, and not just spiritual, as you say. On your side of it, do you remember, as you kind of pieced it together and a tree fell in order to get your attention, and how did you process that? Where did your mind go?
I immediately thought, when we looked at each other, and he says to me, how did that happen? I immediately went to, it's got to be divine intervention, because even without knowing that something happened upstairs, God could only move a tree. You know what I'm saying?
Are you serious? You went there that fast? You went there that fast that God did that?
To me, well, there was no other explanation. When there's things that you can't explain, God's doing something. You may not even know, you may never find out why things happen, but I believe that when you cannot explain things, there is divine intervention, and get ready because something's about to happen. And that's exactly what I thought. God did this for a reason. And sure enough, we go upstairs and we find Kyle committing suicide. You're so stunned by what you're seeing. Your brain can't believe what your eyes are seeing. And I didn't put the two together. Oh, the tree fell so we could come up and find Kyle until later.
Sure. Well, that's what I'm saying, is that there's just that after the fact, when you do put it all together, and you realize that God's hand is right there on that tree, whether it's an angel or the Son of God or God himself, however all this works from heaven, however all this works, when you realize someone, heavenly figure, knocked that 150-pound tree with pot over.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to say this. At that moment, that's when you know how close God or the angels or the saints are to you. That's how close they are. Because we always think, oh, they're in heaven. Oh, they're so far away. They are always standing right beside you. Sometimes, they're not supposed to stop you because you need to learn a lesson. And sometimes they're just right there stopping you, just like this. This stopped everything. And that's how close God is. You think he's up in heaven doing whatever. No, he's there all the time. So to the listeners who are out there right now and they think, yeah, well, where are you? He is right there all the time, but he is never, ever away from you.
I think he's closest when we think he's farthest away. I think I always equate it to when you taught your kids how to ride a bike, and you're running alongside the bike, and your hand is like your finger is like a quarter of an inch away from the bicycle seat, because if he starts to fall, you want to grab it. You're that close. God is that close, but you're not necessarily feeling the touch, but He's right there. Even if you fall, He's right there. I think that's when He's closest. I think that's when Jesus is closest. I think they're all so close to us during the most difficult times.
Absolutely.
I mean, and Kyle's angel too. I mean, God knows God knows, and God knows what things are going to happen. And hey, angel, go down and knock over a tree. I mean, it's just it's all in the pipeline, if you will. It's just kind of all in the pipeline. It's still Maria Manna in that moment, as your husband did, that moment of, my God, that was God right there.
Well, there's no other explanation. Our house didn't shake. We weren't having an earthquake. But in the meantime, Kyle's doing something that will end his life. And God's like, not yet. Nope. You want to keep on watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune? Well, not right now.
And if you could please, Maria, make sure your answer is in the form of a question next time, I'd appreciate it. And Kyle, let's talk about Kyle. Has he found God along the way?
So I had him baptized and confirmed, and took communion. And so Kyle isn't really a follower, but, your angels never leave you. God never leaves you. And maybe, when he has some dark times in his life, maybe he does feel the power of God, but it's not something that is often talked about between us. Every once in a while, I'll say something to him about God, and he accepts quietly, but he's not a really strong, demonstrative Christian.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? God gives us more time. You look at the mercy of God and all of that too. He gives us more time. He gave Kyle more time. He's giving Kyle more time.
Yeah. And
I love your idea of him speaking and writing a book. And there are so many people going through some horrific times, especially the young. I think he could be a huge benefit to so many young people.
Yes.
It would help if he understood how his life has been saved by God on a couple of occasions here, and how God is so close, but he's not there yet. So maybe when he is there, maybe then that book happens and that speaking happens. Because until then, I'm not sure he could explain it. I'm not sure. He may not be there yet, I guess is what I'm saying. He may not be there yet.
I think his head is busy with other things in life. Mm-hmm. And, I think when we slow down and reflect and, like I said before, stop and listen, maybe he will hear God's voice. Maybe he will have that understanding that it was divine intervention. I think he knows that, but I don't think he thinks so much about that. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it will become a realization that, that it was divine intervention and it couldn't have been anything else, because it was the end for him.
Yeah.
It was absolutely the end. And who can stop the end but God? Who can stop the end? No one. Right?
Beautiful. And just a point of reference here, I got you out on the road performing. Where are you right now? Where are you?
I'm in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm performing for an Italian festival. Mm-hmm.
Very good. And if anybody wants to find your music, I know I found a little bit of you on YouTube under Maria Manna. How else can people find your music?
Hey, guess what? I just got a Wikipedia page.
Well, that means you're famous now. No one's famous unless you have a Wikipedia page. That's pretty good.
Well, my husband said, you know what? Back in the day, you would go to Britannica or World Encyclopedia, right? He goes, it's like you're in the World Encyclopedia,
wow.
But just online.
I love it. Now appearing in Wikipedia, Maria Manna. I thank you so much, Maria. Have a great show tonight.
Hey, well, thank you. And listen, I just want to let you know that you are so inspirational. I look forward. It's 3:00 Tuesday morning, and wherever I am in the world, and I'm looking at my phone. When's that podcast coming? When's that podcast coming? So you are inspirational, and thank you so much for being a part of my life.
God bless you. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye now. The mercy of God, sent an angel to knock over a tree. Talk about getting your attention. Knocking over a tree. The dog. The dog knew what to do right on cue. Christopher. He got pushed out of the I just need to be spiritual mode that so many people fall into no, I need to be closer to Christ. I need to be gathered with other like-minded people in a church. Find me a church, Maria. Find me a church. And where's my necklace? I mean, once again, God's saying, yeah, I am right here. I am right here. I'm this close. He's always this close. I thought Maria put that so beautifully. He's always this close. He's this close right now with you, with me right now. He's right here. And his breath is minty fresh. He's right here this close all the time. I'm going to be talking about this Wednesday, September 5th, 2018. Here in the Cleveland area in Medina, Ohio, St. Francis Xavier Church between 7 and 8. If you're in the area, I hope you can come by. It's a freebie. We're going to be talking about these encounters, my encounters, others' encounters, some of the Touched by Heaven stories, global encounters in which the world is just kind of going, what? But these encounters are God's way of saying, I'm right here. I'm right now. I'm this close to you right here, right now. Like the 2 times he restored my vision. Twice, once at night, pitch black room. I haven't been able to see in the dark since I was 13. Legally blind with retinitis pigmentosa, and yet in a pitch black room I was seeing. God was turning the light on. I'm right here. Do you see me? Do you see me? Do you see me, Trapper? I'm right here. And then he turned it off. And he was just as close when he turned it off as when he turned it on. And I had to realize that. And then later, during the day, on, off. Do you see me? I'm right here. I'm this close all the time. And it changes the relationship when you know that. And you may be saying, I wish I had one of those encounters. Look back in your life. There have been moments, you blew them off maybe as coincidence. That was just a coincidence. No, God says hi all the time. I mean, it took me, 40, 50 years before I realized that my birth announcement wasn't a coincidence, a baby holding a microphone with the words, a new voice is on the air. Just a coincidence? No, that was just God saying, later, you're going to see this and see the connection. You're going to see that I've always been right here, right now. And you're supposed to be behind a microphone. You've always been going to be behind a microphone, ultimately to serve me in a better way. This is the God most people don't know exists. Bring somebody who's maybe not so sure. I guarantee you they will be entertained and perhaps inspired, just maybe. I guarantee you that they will hear things they've never heard before. And people aren't dumb. They get it. And they do with it whatever it is they want to do with it. So, St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church, Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, and that's in Medina, Ohio. And that will wrap it up. Hey, I haven't mentioned Patreon for quite a while. If you find these episodes inspirational for you, you find some meat and potatoes, you find manna falling out of the sky with these episodes, little blessings, then go to touchedbyheaven.net and become a patron. At touchedbyheaven.net. Oh, and you have stories? You got to tell me your story. We got to keep this machine running and keep these inspirational stories coming. So go to touchedbyheaven.net. Contact me there. Give me a little brief outline of what your story is. I'll get back to you. And we'll talk. Okay? In the meantime, thanks so much for listening to Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.